Hello there everybody, Sam's Trains here, welcome back to the railway and welcome back to another Bachmann tank engine review. So today I'm going to be unboxing a very lovely little tank engine, and it is this, the Bachmann V3. Now I've had this particular one for absolutely ages. It's probably going on for about 2 years now that I've had this, and for some reason I've never reviewed it. I don't know why, because it's a really lovely little tank engine, and on top of that it's hardly run at all on the channel, which is a shame, so I'm going to change that today and do a review for you. Now as you can tell by the packaging, this is a slightly older model. You can tell that it hasn't got the most up-to-date Bachmann packaging on it. But there is a more up-to-date version of the V3 out there now, which has a much improved newer chassis on it. So if you want to check those out, I've included a link in the description. If you want to see the latest version of this, just click on those and you'll be directed to those. But today I'm going to be looking at this slightly older version, which is in the very, very beautiful Doncaster green. So let's get to it. Let's see what this lovely little loco's like. So yes, there it is, the slightly old-fashioned now Bachmann packaging, which was of course the standard probably a little over 10 years ago or something like that. On the front there you can see a photograph of the class in real life, and of course Bachmann always used the same photo to show all of their models from that class, so that isn't necessarily the livery that mine's in, and I'm going to show you that in just a second. Obviously I have been referring to this as a little tank engine up till now in the video, but that isn't really true. Of course the V3 is quite a large tank engine, especially by the standards of the Bachmann 040 or something like that. But anyway, we'll get onto that in just a moment. First of all then, here is what is on the end of the box. So you can see that my particular version is 31-608, and this is the V3 tank, and mine's the number 7684, LNER lined Doncaster green. So yes, a very lovely livery on this one, and I specifically bought this in the green livery. I wasn't too interested in getting LNER black or BR black. I really did like the look of the LNER green. Okay, so let me get this out then. Let me just open up the end of the box, and as you can see you've got this sleeve with the V3 on it. Let me show you this. There you go, there's the photo a little bit better, a little bit up close, and then on the back of this card you've got a brief history of the V3, so if you'd like to, feel free to pause that, and of course you've also got a nice diagram of the loco too. And just inside here we have a bit of an information pack. So this one is just about care of your locomotive and stuff, so I won't look at that, but I will show you the exploded diagram. So as you can see by this version is the split chassis version, and obviously, as I was saying earlier, Bachmann have updated this now so that it is DCC ready, and of course it no longer has that split chassis design. But actually this one's not too bad, even though it's got the split chassis design. It seems to run okay, touch wood, so I'm pretty happy, but obviously the new ones aren't like that. Okay, let's put this to one side then, and we'll take a look at the loco and detail pack. Let me grab the detail pack first. So quite a sparse detail pack, this one. This one's just got some brake rigging inside and a couple of vacuum pipes for the brakes and things, but apart from that, that is all. So quite a sparse detail pack. That suggests the rest of the detail, of course, is fitted to the model already. So let me get this out there. Let me just push it out from the hole in the back of the box. And here she is, the V3 262 LNER tank engine, and isn't she lovely? I mean, she's not the newest of models, she's a fair few years old now, but still really quite attractive, especially from a distance. So I'm going to show you this thing up close in just a second, and obviously up close she's not all that impressive in comparison to modern locos, but once again she's pretty good for the age. So we'll get to that in just a second, but for now here's a little bit of a brief history of the V3s. Alright, here we go. So the Class V3 was designed by Sir Nigel Gresley, and it was introduced in 1939. The V3 was identical to the Class V1 though, which came a little bit before. In fact, they were introduced almost 10 years previously, but the V1s had a lower boiler pressure compared to the later V3, and both classes were 3-cylinder designs, but of course the V3 had greater tractive effort thanks to the higher boiler pressure. So 82 V1 locomotives were built in total, as well as an additional 10 V3s, but most of the V1s were eventually upgraded to V3s anyway, which of course had much higher boiler pressure, except around 10 V1s were left as V1s. Very sadly, none were preserved. All examples were unfortunately scrapped, but there has been talk, a whisper if you like, that a brand new replica may be in the pipeline, so perhaps one day we might see a V3 run again. That would be nice. So there she is then, the Gresley V3 up against the white background, and don't you just think this class was beautiful? I think I might even prefer this class to the L1, and I reckon in real life they were probably better runners as well, because the L1s had a lot of problems. But yeah, the V3s strike me as a very, very beautiful class of locomotives, all the more so of course in this Doncaster green, which I absolutely love. Now, as I've already mentioned, a lot of the features of this particular model aren't quite as modern as they might be. This is quite a few years old now. And I'm going to talk about those features in just a second, but also bear in mind I didn't pay very much for this particular model. This one I think only cost me £30 to £35, and that was second hand, but the seller I believe said that it was unused. So an unused model for £30 to £35 is excellent. And of course, if you want to buy a V3 brand new with the updated chassis, it's going to cost you over £100. Of course, for that money you get a lot more features, but then obviously you do have to pay for those features, and you have to pay quite heavily for those. This one doesn't have quite as many features, but it was an awful lot cheaper. We're talking, a third to a quarter of the price of a new one. So, to be honest, I'm more than happy. So, let's talk about these features then. Well, first of all, inwardly, of course, you don't have any DCC socket inside there because it is a split chassis, and split chassis brings with it its own problems. For example, axle failure is quite common with these. My particular one is okay, but that's because it's unused. I have seen quite a lot of these V3s that do have the axle failure. So, if you want to buy one of these older ones, by all means, go ahead, but just be wary and just be conscious of the fact that these can have the axle failure, so it's worth checking. So another feature that these unfortunately don't have is NEM pockets. As you can see, this does have a slimline coupling on it, but unfortunately it's not NEM, it is screwed to the chassis directly. So if you wanted to change the coupling there, you'll need to find another one that will fit the chassis, which of course is a little bit more difficult to do. This loco doesn't have any cab detail of any kind, unfortunately. As you can see, it is blank inside there, and obviously I would assume the later version of this will have a painted cab. I don't know for sure because I don't own one, but I would hope that that is a feature. And obviously, finally, the detail is relatively basic. I'll talk more about the detail in a moment, but obviously the paintwork isn't quite up to modern standards, and the detailing is fairly basic, and also you don't have the cast metal running board. In fact, most of the bodywork on the loco is plastic, and obviously these days, especially from Bachmann, you tend to get die-cast metal work going on, at least with the running boards. Okay, so let's talk about the detail then. We'll start with the paintwork, and back here from a distance it really does look absolutely perfect. And personally I really love the way this one looks, despite any sort of imperfections in the paintwork. But if we take a close look at the boiler banding, as you can see, it's quite large scale. It's not as fine as it is on modern locos. And as you can see, the sort of size of the bands varies. It's a little bit sloppy. It almost looks like a repaint, but this is how they came from the factory. Obviously, the paintwork on modern Bachmann locos that you'd buy today is a lot tidier than this. But this isn't too bad by any means. It's not terrible. And certainly for some reason on the side of the tanks, the paintwork is a lot more tidy. I assume it's because it's so much more difficult to paint the curved bands onto the boiler. But on a flat surface, as on the side of the tank there, you can see that it is much more nicely done. And the LNER 7684 is nicely applied to the water tank there. As you can see, this doesn't have the proper LNER font. I wonder if this particular version is modelled just, as nationalisation was occurring, and so all the fonts and shortly the paintwork presumably were going to be changed. That's possible. As you can see, the wheel set is also painted green. There's no lining or anything on this. I don't know whether that's prototypical. Potentially they didn't really have lining on the wheels, or maybe not at this stage in the model's life. Not too sure, but either way, they are just painted green, but not lined green or anything like that. And of course, there's loads more lining on the model, though along the running board you've got the red lining there, which stretches along the whole model. And certainly around the coal bunker, there's a lot of painted detail going on here with all the lining, as you can see, which once again, just like on the water tank, is really quite neat and tidy. I've already mentioned the cab, but I will just show you that we do have a separately fitted glazed window on the cab. A little bit more white paintwork going on here, white lining I should say, but obviously, as I've already mentioned, no paintwork inside the cab of any kind. If we take a look at the smoke box door, no paintwork going on there, but there is a fair amount of separately fitted detail going on, including handrails and lamp irons fitted to that. The side of the boiler and the top of the tanks do have quite a bit of separately fitted detail going on, but this pipe, for example, as you can see, is quite large scale, and I don't know, it just looks a little bit toy-like. It doesn't look as fine as it might do on modern locos. Who knows, on the V3 it may have looked just like that, but to me that looks a little bit sort of chunky in my opinion, but who am I to say? I'm not an expert. Okay, as you can see just in front of the cab you do have separately fitted safety valves here, which I believe are made of metal, and also you've got quite a nice looking whistle coming out of the cab there. I believe that one is made of plastic, but nonetheless it's painted up and it looks pretty good. The front buffer beam is nicely painted up as well. As you can see, you've got the running number and other information on there. One modern feature this loco does have is sprung buffers, let me show you, and they are metal buffers too, which is quite a nice feature, so that isn't too bad at all. I'm glad it's got those. And just above there you can see we do have separately fitted lamp irons, but again the texture of those is a little bit off to me. They just look a little bit strange, don't they? Not quite as polished as they might be on a modern loco, but certainly not too bad. Now underneath the boiler you can see there's clearly supposed to be maybe a gap going under there, but as you can clearly tell the block style chassis is just completely taking up that space, which perhaps is a little bit unrealistic, I'm not too sure, but it's such a small area that certainly from any kind of distance it's not too noticeable. But as you can see along the running board there is a small amount of detail going on there, which I think is just moulded to the running board, but quite nice to see nonetheless. The coal in the bunker is relatively chunky, it's not too bad or anything like that, but obviously this one doesn't look as though it's removable, so you're kind of stuck with it unless you want to do some extra hard work. But yeah, it's not too bad. We've seen worse coal, haven't we, I think, in the past. So there we go, quite a dated looking locomotive, but overall, despite all of its slight downsides, I think it's still a beautiful model. So I think it's got that going for it. And of course, it was dirt cheap as well. I mean, this is a quarter of the price that you'd pay for a modern one in a BR black. For your money with this one, you don't get as many features, but you get a much nicer livery, not necessarily a nicer paint job, but a nicer livery and a fairly good performer. So talking of performance, let's get this down onto the track and we'll see just how nicely she runs. Okay, so there she is then down onto the track, looking really lovely actually. As I say, I do love these. And she, assuming she runs okay, is about to be coupling up to these ex-LNER teak coaches in the blood and custard livery. I always like the look of those, so hopefully she'll look nice pulling those. But now then, let's talk about performance. So let's talk about pickups. Obviously the 3 driving wheels, or the 3 driven axles, do pick up from the track, but also this front pony truck here also has the capability to pick up on it as well. So actually you've got quite good reliable picking up on this model. Let's try it with slow speed then. Let me give it a little bit of juice and see how nice and slowly she goes. Now as you can see she is running quite smoothly there, but now she's stopped, you see, because unfortunately the wheel set seems to bind up. Let me show you that again. So there we are, not touching the controller. She's creeping forwards as you can see, but it's not all that smooth. As you can see it's stopped for a second. Now it's inching forwards again. Maybe I need to give it a little bit more. There we go. See if it stops again. Yeah, as you can see, stopped dead again. You can still hear the motor running. Now I don't know why it does that, because there's not an issue with the quartering or anything like that, because there can't be. They use pegs on the axles, as you can see. It's not all that happy, is it? You see it keeps stopping. So I don't know why it is. It's something to do with the linkage system or the rods, something like that. It's not the smoothest in the world, and for that reason I'm not going to give it a massively high score. But the loco weight is pretty good. Even though there isn't any die cast going on with the bodywork, most of the chassis is made of metal, of course, and it is a massive chassis, so it weighs quite a lot. So let's see this pulling power then. She's going to be coupling up to 7 coaches, so it's quite a big load for her. There we go. She's not great in reverse either for some reason. Nice and steadily does it. There we go. I'll just double check that she's coupled, and I'll adjust the focus here just so that she looks okay. Let me double check then, because we have got slightly different couplings going into each other here. Shouldn't be a problem. I'm just got to make sure it's working okay. Yep, that seems to be coupled. Okay, let me set her to go forwards then and give her a little bit of juice. See how she manages with all these coaches. You'll have to let me know if you spotted any wheel slip there. Was there any? I put a poll in. Did you see any? I wasn't watching, so I'm not too sure. But as you can see, she is moving all 7 coaches without too much of a problem. Very nice. She looks lovely with those, doesn't she? So anyway, the theme of today is going to be LNER tank engines. So on that theme I have the L1, which is of course similar looking, except this one is a 264 rather than a 262. And she's got a bit of a sleeper train, as you can see, with some also ex-LNER teak coaches, this time in the maroon, which should look lovely with her, I think. And finally then, on the inside line, a completely different tank engine. Here she comes now, let me bring her in. This is the J50, so quite a bit smaller in LNER black, of course, and she's pulling just a little cute little goods train, which I think would look nice. So see which other LNER tank engines you can spot, and see if you can spot the odd one out. There's the L1 looking lovely. Just waiting for the V3 to appear. There she is. So actually not a bad model at all. And actually for 30 quid I can highly recommend this. But if you're getting the split chassis version, I wouldn't recommend paying much more than 30 to 40 quid. Just because they're not all that reliable, and if something goes wrong you don't want to have wasted all that money. But 30 to 35 quid, yeah, I can highly recommend it. I like that L1 actually. A lot of people do too. It's considered one of Hornby's better models. I actually think Hornby have done loads of better models than that, but yeah, I agree, it's certainly one of the good ones for sure. Right, let's see if the V3 gives us any wheel slip then coming up Gordon's Hill. I think there is a little bit. Let's see. Oh yes. A little bit of a struggle. I don't know if she'd manage 8 coaches, I think that would be pushing it a bit, but with 7 she just about manages it. But certainly if you've got a flat layout, I think you could get 8 without too much issue. Yeah, you've got to love her though, haven't you? Even though the detail's not absolutely superb, just seeing her run round on the layout is fantastic. And at the end of the day, that's what's important. If you love seeing them run, and if you take care of the model and enjoy seeing it run, what else matters, to be honest? So here are my ratings then for the Bachmann V3. Detail then 3 out of 5. Yes, obviously the detail is starting to show its age on this one a little bit. No cab detail of any kind. The paintwork is a little bit sloppy, and there's a few other details on there that are missing unfortunately. But I've given it a middle of the road score because the detail that was there is pretty good. So 3 out of 5 there. Power 4 out of 5, 7 coaches is pretty good, so I've given it a relatively high power score there. I don't think on my layout it would manage any more than 7, I think 8 would be too much, but certainly that's pretty good, so 4 out of 5. Slow speed then, the slow speed itself was okay. I mean, it is quite a good crawl at those slow speeds, but the problem is it seems to bind up at those slow speeds, so you can't sustain it. So 3 out of 5 there, just middle of the road again. Again, quality 3 out of 5. Now the build quality seems to be okay, but the quality of the mechanism is not. I really don't like the split chassis mechanism because of the axle failure that often comes with it. So I've given that 3 out of 5. I'm not a big fan of that. But value for 30 to 35 pounds like I paid, that is really, really good. That's a fraction of the price you'd pay for a modern version, so that isn't bad at all. 5 out of 5. Overall then, that is 7.22 out of 10. I think it was definitely the value that saved this one. And into the rankings she goes then at 20th, just above the Bachmann Gordon and below the Hornby D16. Oh, gorgeous, isn't she, actually? And she looks pretty nice with these blood and custards as well. I thought I would use the ex-LNER coaches today because I reckon the liveries on the L1 and the V3 are later liveries, so I thought I'd use some later coaches as well. Don't know how accurate that's going to be, but I thought it would be fun to try. Oh dear, a bit of dire wheel slip there. She survived it though. Okay folks, well that is the end of today's review. I do hope you enjoyed it, and of course let me know in the comments if you like seeing slightly older locos reviewed from time to time. As you know, I've quite a soft spot for vintage locos, so I really don't mind doing these from time to time. So if you don't mind either, let me know and I will definitely try and do some more. But for now folks, thank you very much for your company, and thank you for watching, of course, and I will see you all very, very soon. Cheers everybody.